I'm very honored by this invitation, and it's my duty today to outline a field which allows hopefully fruitful debates about the future of the textile and fashion industry. The title is Fashion in the Anthropocene, but it could also be called Fashion in the Age of an Announced Collapse. At least if you see the Anthropocene as another word for the big, great catastrophe. But that's already the end, and I would rather start from the beginning. The development of textiles is one of the most significant achievements in human history. Without them, people wouldn't have been able to spread all over the planet with its diverse climates. The history of textiles appears to be a part of our cultural history, which is plausible at first glance. But what do we mean exactly by culture? In fact, it's a very broad, fuzzy, and disputed term which can encompass social, economic, aesthetic, communicative, and many more aspects. But textiles and fashion also have a profound connection to our biology by regulating body temperature, metabolism, and our perception. We need to take a closer look at this complexity if we want to talk about the future of the fashion and textile industry in the so-called Anthropocene. I want to propose a co-evolutionary view that asks not only how people produce textiles and fashion, but also how textiles produce people. I'm not talking about clothes makes the man. What I want to say is, if you talk about modes of production and consumption in the fashion industry, you may not be silent about how they materialize modes of existence. The Anthropocene has been defined analogically to the geological history of the Earth. It claims that now the anthropos is the ultimate force which shapes the entire planet. The point is clear. We, as human beings, must act now to save the world immediately. This message seems to have reached the fashion and textile industry, and many people ask, what should I wear to save the planet? During the last decade, the interest in sustainable manufacturing processes has increased significantly. Now the sustainable view covers working condition, use of resources, consumption, waste production, transparency of supply chains, and many more aspects. Quite an impressive range, but nevertheless, without minimizing these efforts, I would like to raise some doubts. What about the hidden logic of markets? And what about our understanding of ourselves as human beings? Markets and economies are not the same thing. In the second half of the 20th century, conditions were created for global resource and production markets. This is not equivalent to new economic models. Today's planetary assemblages of information, data, knowledge, or bioeconomies stand for new forms of interconnectedness, but these are far from representing a new economy of the human. Discussions are still focusing on nation-states economies and the question how a green industry should be designed. And quite often, this question is discussed in a very moral and emotional way. But if we understand that not only the modes of production have caused problems, but also the order of national economies and the logic of markets, then it's not enough to talk about a sustainable textile or fashion industry. It's about redesigning markets, economies, and social contexts. For example, if you discover nature, social, and global justice as central factors for a sustainable fashion world, it does not automatically imply demands for greener, more social, or fairer markets. Markets, economies, and modern societies are part of the problem. But interestingly, current demands generally related to the contemporary understanding of markets, economies, and modern society stay. I said that textiles and fashion have cultural, social, aesthetic, communicative, cognitive, and biological aspects, and the current understanding of markets, in my understanding, then allows two ways to interpret our situation. Either we restrict fashion purely to the products we produce in a market economy and ignore all other aspects somehow related to them, or we assume that the market comprises all of these aspects, thus giving the market absolute regulatory power. The first case hardly allows a sustainable production because by excluding central aspects, it creates precisely those problems we are currently dealing with. The second case corresponds to the neoliberal ideology, which wants to leave everything to the market. Don't get me wrong. This is not meant to be an abridged criticism of the market or capitalism. That would be too easy. Rather, I want to focus on the complexity of the interrelationship in order to think about new ways. Therefore, it's important to take a closer look at the seemingly obvious self-evidence of the Anthropocene, the age of man. The attempt to define the anthropos, be it as Homo faber, Homo economicus, Homo sapiens, or Homo digitalis, etc., have not been successful. Especially when we talk about the cultural capacities by which humans transform the planet, more and more uncertainties are emerging about whether it is really simply humans who cause changes. The development of artificial intelligence, for example, provokes for many people insecurities about who is acting, humans, computers. But instead of discussing opposites, smarter discussions started already decades ago about cyborgs and hybrids, about the impossibility of separating nature, technology, and humans from each other. The realization that humans are part of nature, that they have actually never left it, may sound banal, but it raises the question how humans and nature are connected. If nature is not a part, meaning that human beings and culture are also nature, then it makes no sense to define them separately. So, we do not have to deal with problems of nature, culture, objects, products, but with a crisis of our self-image. The crucial point is how to connect concepts of nature, culture, and human beings in such a way that we get a comprehensive understanding of ecosystems in the widest sense. This is anything but easy, because our perception is influenced massively by ideas considering nature as primordial and original, letting human beings and their cultures appear automatically external to nature and thus endangering nature. But there is neither an original state of nature nor an original state of human beings. We have to say goodbye to the idea of living in a harmonic state of balance and accept that in fact we are involved in evolutionary open-ended processes. Neither can we control these processes, nor is there a final goal we could or should anticipate. At the beginning, I spoke not only about human beings producing textiles, but also about textiles producing humans. Let me explain. From the invention of the first sewing needle to the invention of weaving looms and today's digital virtual reality scenarios, people have not only developed a wide variety of processes for the production of numerous textiles. In the course of these developments, they changed their own biology by designing new processes of metabolism, new forms of thinking, understanding, body posture, inventing genders, communication, and logics of social interrelations, from tribes to communities, nations, and global networks. In these developments, humans have never remained the same. Such a co-evolutionary perspective can help us to avoid reduced notions of nature, human beings, and culture, and to substitute them by a deeper understanding of developmental interrelationships. But it also allows us to rethink fashion as a practice open for development of future forms of existence. If you think about how fashion can connect culture or societies, you could also ask how culture or social relationships evolve by reinventing textiles and fashion. Depending on how we design fashion, how we create markets, economies, we materialize and co-evolve with our ecosystems. But this will only succeed on an experimental basis. From my point of view, every utopia, every concrete plan to save the planet must fail because it reduces complexity and thus bears the risk of tipping into the opposite. The idea that we, people, have to save the world runs the risk of taking an anthropocentric conception of the world and making it to a point of reference for the rest of the world. We do have to develop something that might be called a sense of relationship, a basic understanding of co-evolutionary interconnections, and to understand that there are countless heterogeneous actors in this world who have no interest in a master plan, people save planet. I do hope we can find ways to bring such a wider understanding into the debates of textile and fashion world. Thank you very much.